conversation probably around 7:55 this morning. Hopped on a phone call with a buddy, and we were talking about Google current stock price. And granted, I'm not here giving any kind of financial advice. That's not what I do. Um, we're talking about where it's at and where I would like. I'm like I'm looking for a deeper discount than where it's at. And then we started talking about why. And I'm like, look, dude, I'm probably like more excited to look at IBM than I am for Google right now. And then we got in this conversation of why. And I always look at who's still here in 20 years. Now, that question doesn't mean that there's a tremendous amount of money to make off of somebody in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. But I just think about, longevity, what's brought to the market, and competition. And I'm like, well, we know IBM continues to reinvent itself and brings a tremendous amount of diversity in services and over the years products that it seems like they're never going to go away. And you look at Microsoft with their half the world, everyone's thinking AWS, but what's it, Azure or whatever, Microsoft, like, there's so much stuff running on that back end. They're bringing products that businesses need, and you almost can't get away from it. Now, I know Google does too. We'll get there. But when I look at Google, I'm like, man, if you take their ad revenue away, what are we talking about here? And I think that's always been the case. They've tried inventing a lot of new products. It's not gone so well. And some of their, best products other than search was a company they bought. It wasn't something they really innovated from scratch. And I look at YouTube thinking, how long before, excuse me, someone comes along and, kind of like what Liv's doing to the PGA right now, someone just comes along and say, hey, we're going to create a new video platform. We want all these top, content creators to come over here, and we're going to pay you even fatter money for this. At some point, I feel YouTube's going to get really pressed to pay the content creators, the good ones, more money. That's going to eat into profits. And then from a search engine perspective, did we think that you're only going to use Google for the rest of your life? And you look at the younger generations of how much of their searches are actually done on TikTok now, which is something Kane over at Daggerfin talks about. Can Google really survive as a search engine forever, making the kind of money they do? We know the fat profit center is from ads. So I'm looking at increasing expenses on the content creator side. If we go into a recession, less small businesses and probably less ad spend in general across AdWords platforms and YouTube and every other place. How long before another search engine eventually comes out on a different platform in another way that just sucks the interest away? If you look at, if we're going to say that, Twitter, the best days are over, and Facebook, the best days are over, why aren't we having that same conversation for Google? And maybe we'll still be using Google as our primary search engine 20 years from now. I just don't know. But I feel like IBM and Microsoft are going to continue to develop consulting and business services that the world's going to need forever. So if I had to pick one, who fades? I mean, maybe Google reinvents itself. They got a tremendous amount of money and power and reach. They can buy other companies. But where they stand right now, I feel like IBM's going to bring more value than, say, Google would. Yeah, this isn't that well thought out. It's a 7 o'clock in the morning conversation. We see a lot of the old ways dying when it comes to tech. And it is that other saying, like, no business was meant to stay around forever. But, if there was a business that was going to fail out of the three or just lose their standing, I feel that maybe it's Google. I think I'm more excited to look at IBM as a stock right now than I'm looking at Google, to be honest. Google drops down another 15, 20 bucks. Like, I'm a contrarian type investor. So, I'm looking for solid companies at a good deal. IBM's weathered this storm pretty well for this year. Looking at year to date, didn't get butchered like a lot of the other stocks. And then Microsoft, you got to think about it, man. So much of the world runs on Microsoft. The business world, there's so much stuff tied in there. I don't know. anyways, what are your thoughts? Pick one. You know, which one do you think would fail and why? They're more than likely they're all going to be here, just in different capacities in 20 years. I think my own general thought right now is, one of these is going to get knocked off the tier, and they're going to get dropped down. And at the end of the day, we can replace search. And there's so much content and new platforms coming out, it's possible YouTube gets knocked off. Now, I know Google's got all this other stuff going on. They got a tremendous amount of stuff going on. But I'm thinking about the primary revenue driver still ads, right? So if that stops or that gets just knocked down, and then they don't have all that cash flow to fund all these other projects, where does that leave them? I don't know. It's I'm not really interested in investing in anything right now because the market's just crazy. I'm gonna sit back and chill, but I am looking for opportunities. And is it possible IBM stock gets cut in half with the buzzsaw? It's possible, but we'll see. So, anyways, this is a random conversation from an early morning on a Wednesday. So yeah, I'll do a quick piece of content. See what everyone else thinks. Drop a comment.